Good morning. I'm going to check that everybody can hear me. Can somebody give me a thumbs up? That could be Alex or Marie or one of the participants. Um, I'm doing all right. Perfect. Okay. We're going to run an interactive session today. And we're going to look at regular expressions. I'm not going to be teaching you regular expressions beyond just some very basics, but I'm going to show you how you could begin to learn them using a really smart tool called Regex 101, but also one of these language generating AI models that Alex just referred to, the popular one called ChatGPT. So in order for us to get the most out of this workshop, I am going to direct you to a Google document that we are going to share. So I need you to go to that Google document if you want the most out of the workshop. Why? Because we're going to paste and copy bits of our code. Sometimes it'll be something that I want to share with you, and sometimes you might have something you want to share with me and the other participants. We'll do it at the bottom of that document. The other reason is there's already some links there. And because we're going to be using these tools, I've provided those links in that document. So I'm going to paste that into the chat now. So you should be able to follow that link from the Zoom chat to the Google Doc. Now, the Google Doc is a shared document. You should all have editing access to it. So please play friendly with each other in there. Don't go deleting things or secretly changing the URLs in the background. It'll make it hard for everyone to have the best out of the day. So I'll know that you're ready to get started when you give me a thumbs up in Zoom, right? So you can do that by going to the bottom of the screen. There's a reactions option, and you can click the thumbs up option there. And I know you're ready because you have both Regex 101 open as a tab in your browser and ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT, if you haven't used it before, you're going to need to log into it. We're not using the pro version. We're just using kind of this free trial version that everybody has access to. You can use Google credentials or other credentials to log in if you don't want to create a new account. So run that. And once I've seen kind of thumbs up most places, I'll know that you're good to go. All right, I've seen 3 or 4 thumbs up so far. Okay, so some of you might still be 1 or 2 of you that are trying to open those up. I'm going to ask 2 questions, and I'd like each of you to respond in the chat. First question is, have you used regex, regular expressions, before? Sometimes it gets converted to regex. And have you used ChatGPT before? Yes or no. So I'm just really looking for yes or no, or maybe a lot or a little, exactly like you're doing in the chat. I've just dropped an example in there. I just want a sense for kind of where you are, right? So really nice to know that you used it in MATLAB. If I have an opportunity, I'll try to grab a MATLAB example. Okay, and this is good for you to notice as well, because we're all over the map here. We have people who haven't used either. We have people who've used both, people who've used one and not the other, and that's to be expected. So today's workshop is going to start on the basis of you not having used either of these before. Clearly that's true for a few of you, but not for everyone. We're going to start on this shared sort of assumption. We're going to build up from there. So I'm going to do a screen share now. And the intent here is that you can see my screen, you can see what I'm typing, and that you can type and follow along on your screens as well. Big caveat here before we start, that when we move to ChatGPT, for those of you who have used it before, you'll know this is true. Those of you who haven't, I want you to know this up front. ChatGPT is going to be a game changer for us in a workshop environment, because we can ask it the same question at the same time and it will provide us with different answers sometimes. When I ask it the same question over time, it often gives me a different answer the next time. Doesn't mean that the answers are wrong. When we're looking for example, regular expressions, we want to create a bit of code that will find text or strings of text in documents or for certain formats. Well, there's lots of ways. There's lots of rivers that flow to the sea that gets it done. And that's okay. But sometimes it makes mistakes. And so we're going to have to check for that. So I'm going to do my screen share. And what you should be seeing here is that shared Google document, right? In a Google Chrome window with the tabs at the top. So you can see Regex 101. And ChatGPT is open there as well. I just want to confirm that somebody can see that other than me. Can I get a thumbs up? Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay. So regular expressions. For those of you who said no in the chat, you haven't used them before, I'm going to provide 2 examples of cases where we might use regular expressions. So I'm going to open a new link here. I will paste this link into the shared Google Docs so you have it as well. So while that's opening up, at the bottom here, example 1. So you can follow that link and look there, or you can just look at the screen if you want. So what do I have here? I have a tool that lists all the libraries and archives in Canada, right? And you've got a little timeline, time slider here. You control what date range, when they were created, when they closed down, and so on and so forth. Hopefully you can't hear the dog too much in the background. Somebody's coming to the door. And so, fine, this is a tool. What does regular expressions have to do with this? When I came across this project, what they had was a really big book. It was basically like a giant phone book, hundreds of pages that listed every single library and archive in Canada, when they opened, when they closed. And they wanted to take that book and turn it into this online tool, right? They had to file as a PDF, but the PDF was locked down and they weren't able to get the addresses out. They couldn't copy. So they had graduate students who were basically going in and typing by hand while they had a PDF open the other side. It was a brutal process. It was going to take them all summer to get these literal hundreds of addresses. So we opened up the PDF, and so we were able to get the raw text underneath, but then how do we find all the addresses? Well, we used regular expressions to do it. And so they were able to pull out the addresses, and then the graduate students had to do a little bit of cleaning up, and it turned a summer's worth of work just copying and pasting into, maybe a week of cleaning stuff up, and then they were able to move on and build this tool. So there's one case. Regular expressions can find text for you. And when you need to find large volumes of text and that text is changing, but it has a pattern. And the pattern we were able to zoom in on here was the postal code. Because if we could find a postal code, then we could find the address lines before it, and we could find the address lines under it because it was standardized in the document. So they're really nice for that. Another thing that they're good for is forcing patterns. So I'm going to open up another window here, pass in another example. I will also put this in our shared document. Somebody has highlighted all the text in our document right now. That makes me concerned because all they have to do is press the space bar and it all goes away. So whoever that, thank you. So there's another one. This is just a Google web form to sign up for a workshop. It's no longer accepting responses. So much for my full example here. But the point here was it asks you for an email address. You've done web forms that ask you for email addresses. And if you type the wrong thing in, it'll say, that doesn't look like an email address. Regular expressions are useful for this too, right? Again, there's a pattern of text. So with this as a background, let's move to using regex 101 to start building regular expressions. We're going to build a super simple one, like the simplest regular expression that I can imagine might be useful. And then we're going to take that, we're going to move it to ChatGPT, and we're going to explode it. So, before I do that, I want to pause. Is there any like really strong example that somebody here who's participating in the workshop today has seen that like, wow, this is why I'm using regular expressions. It's been the game changer for it. Anyone that somebody wants to share? Well, if one comes up, please throw it in the chat. I'd love to know what it is. And it also helps me twist and tweak things as we move through the workshop here. So welcome to the Regular Expressions 101 box. It probably, depending on how big your window is, it should look something similar to this. You may or may not have this left window open. We'll talk about that later. You may or may not have these panels open on the right. We'll talk about those later. What you will have is a box in the middle, but it's titled Regular Expression. And then you have this larger box underneath. It's called the text string. So in text string for right now, we are going to type in a postal code that I don't even know it exists, but it's the same pattern. So we're going to go A1, A1, A1. Or if you're true Canadian, you know it's A1A, 1A1. But we're not going to worry about the space or anything like that for right now. So there's a test string. And so that what we dump in here is whatever it is that we're looking to test. So we're going to try and find this string right now. For those of you who never used regular expressions before, this will be important for you. If you've used them already, you're probably thinking, John, this is pretty basic, but that's okay. We're going to get more advanced stuff pretty quick. So a regular expression is a way of declaring a pattern of text, right? And we can do it with very specific characters. So if I come up here to the regular expressions box and I type A, you can watch it match all the A's that are in the text string, right? So you've just written your first regular expression. It's not an exciting one. It's going to find all the capital A's that are in our document. And if I add a 1 beside it, we can now see it's capturing the A1, 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 A1. And there's 3 of them there, right? And if you have the right panels open under the match information, you can see that it's found these matches. Match 1, right? Characters 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, A1, A1, A1. And if I add another A to the end, now it's only going to match the beginning, right? So you have to give me a moment here. I don't know if you can hear the dog bark in the background. Somebody is out in front of the house. He's losing his mind. I will be right back. People checking the gas lines in the back. So there's nothing I can do about that. I apologize. The world is conspiring against us. So we have A1A, and we can see here. Now, nice thing about this tool is I can take my cursor and I can hover over top of the highlighted sections in the test strings box. You can't hear the dog barking? That's great, because he's just going, thank heavens for noise cancellation. So can you see me hovering over the box in the text string? Right? Can you see that? Okay. So this is nice, right? I can see what it's matching and so on and so forth. And I can finish this off, right? So I can go 1, A, 1, right? So it will match this for me. It's also able to not match things, right? You started to see that a little bit, but if I was to type, I'm down in the text string box here, if I'm to type hello, for example, it's not going to match that. And on another line, let's type another postal code. So let's start to personalize this a little bit. Type your own postal code, right? I can't see it, but let's see if it's going to match that. So I'm going to go up with a postal code from Toronto. And we can see it's not matching that, right? So we have written a regular expression here. And most of the searches you do in a document, when you hold Control and press F and you search for a word like potato or hello or whatever, that's a regular expression, but it's not a powerful one because it doesn't have the ability to match beyond the exact characters. So that's what we want to move to. And if you've never done it before, it starts to get a little bit intimidating. So we're going to move to ChatGPT and we're going to ask ChatGPT to create a regular expression for us. And then it's probably going to explain a little bit about it. We're going to take that regular expression, we're going to move it back into regex 101, and we're going to test it here. And we're going to set up a workflow for that. So I'm going to open the ChatGPT window. So if you haven't used ChatGPT before, that's fine. The differences that you'll have if you've never used it before is on the left here, I have some discussions that I've had in the past. And because I've logged in, it's held on to those discussions. And you can see I've asked it some questions about Canadian postal codes when I was preparing for this workshop. I also asked it to write a farewell speech for a humorous farewell speech for a colleague who was departing. Anyways, it does really interesting, fun stuff. You won't have that if you've never been in before. And if you've been in before, you're going to have your own things, your own chat saved. What matters is this large white box in the middle, and that you've got a send a message option in the bottom. Now, for me, I'm going to ask you to all type the same thing here, because I want to illustrate something about ChatGPT. So what do I want you to type? We're all gonna ask it the same thing. I've asked it this before. I get different answer every time. You may also get a different answer. So in our shared Google Doc, which you should now see on the screen, at the bottom, we ask Chat GPT. Make it easy for you to cut and paste it. I guess it made it this green text underneath. That wasn't necessarily intentional, but there we go. Yeah, so copy this. We're going to ask it to write a regular expression that will select all and only Canadian postal codes, right? So I'm going to copy this, do the same thing. I'm just going to paste it into the bottom here. So if you don't do a lot of, you can right click, copy it. You can highlight it, choose from the edit menu, choose copy. You can also highlight it and use Control or Command C to copy it, and then Control or Command V to paste it. So I'm going to ask it to do this. Now, this is a point where we might get different answers, right? So it's going to tell me a bunch of interesting things. So it's going to write a little interesting. So so what I'm interested in right now is this little block here, right? So this block of code, can you copy this and then come back to our shared document here and paste it underneath, right? I'll just say, yeah. Okay. Because I'm interested in the differences. Now, what you're seeing here is I've already been playing around here with ChatGPT, and it has gotten better at giving me answers, right? So this answer here is very, very close to the answer that I got the first time, right? And we can see that you're not all getting the same answers either, okay? So let's grab one of these, right? Let's grab this second one here. So I'm going to grab this answer. Whoever Anonymous Wolf was pasted that in there. And this is the one I'm going to take back. But before I take it back, and take it back to Regex 101 and then see some of the tools that are there. Let's have a look at what it's telling you here, right? Like, here's a very, potentially very complicated regular expression, right? This does not look like A1A, 1A1, right? It doesn't look like that at all. It's got a lot of symbols and they're very terse, but they're also very specific in what they mean. So the caret at the front and the $ at the end means start and end of a string, right? Which could be what you're after, but maybe you're looking inside a longer set of strings, like paragraphs and pages. You probably wouldn't want those pieces there. This piece for me, that's very specific. Why is it doing that? It's doing that because 2 chats ago, I asked ChatGPT to write me a regular expression that it didn't, that excluded postal codes that didn't exist. And it told me it was complicated and too hard. I've come back a week later, boom, it's done it, right? So something's happening in the background here, and it's personalized to me and the experience that I'm having with ChatGPT, right? These things you're seeing in all of them are variants thereof, right? So it's matching second characters, which must be a digit. You're also seeing another way to see digits, these /Ds. We'll see those in a moment. But anyways, these are sets and ranges, right? So the set is a square bracket and the range is from capital A to capital Z, right? Here in the middle of mine, well, let's forget this out. Anyways, the point is, it's going to give you an explanation and try to help you through it, right? If I had a regular expression that somebody had passed me and I thought, I have no idea what this says, you can come to ChatGPT and you can paste it in and it will walk you through it, right? You can also walk through it in Regex 101. So again, I'm going to grab not my answer, which is this first one. I'm not going to grab this second one. I'm just going to grab this third one, right? And I'm going to grab this third one because when I asked it for the very first time, this is basically the answer that it gave me. So I can look and I can see most of you have variants thereof. So let's take this back to regex 101. And instead of A1A, 1A1, I'm going to delete that. I'm going to paste in that new regular expression. Right? First thing you probably notice is that it's probably matching the postal code that you pasted in before, right? We'll get to the point for trying to break this matching, but we're not quite there yet. What I'd like you to do now is just hover over the colored portions in the regular expressions box and notice the explanations that are being provided for you, right? So again, I've got, oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. I copied mine in again and not the one I intended to. Give me a moment. Let's fix that. So we're all doing the same thing. Okay, there we go. And you'll notice they both still match the same stuff, right? There's many ways to get to the ocean here, right? So very first thing, right? So we want a word boundary. We're looking for the start of a word, and that's what that /b means, right? So I don't want to find this in the middle of a word. I'm looking for something at the beginning of this that tells me this is a new word. Typically, that's a space. Then we have this group of things, right? So we have these square brackets, and there's two ranges in there. One is from capital A to capital Z, so all the capital letters. And then we have lowercase a to lowercase z. We have all the lowercase letters. And as I hover across, we can see this, right? It's going to match a single character. So within this group, I want one single character. I don't want two of them. I don't want anything duplicated. So I want a capital A or a lowercase a, or, right? Something that's a letter. Followed immediately by, well, this /D. And here you're seeing again, just at the beginning, these slashes are escapes. They mean that not what comes after me is not what it usually means. And so it's not a regular D. A /D is called a token. And what we have here is it's a digit token. So give me one of the digits, right? And it tells me it's the equivalent of the same thing with the square brackets with a range of 0 through 9 in it, right? Then I've got the same thing again in terms of matching a character. And I've got something interesting here. I've got a space. Big flag if you've never used regular expressions before, spaces matter. They count as characters. That's what you're matching. And I've had to debug or assist with a number of problems where somebody has accidentally put a space at the end of the regular expression and you can't see it. That's just how it is. So, but we don't always want the space, right? So the question mark here says that whatever was before, right, is between 0 and 1 times. It's either there or it's not there, right? It's either there or it's not there. And then we've got a variation of that on the end, right? And now here as well, at the very end, we see this word boundary token again. And this word boundary token is flagging for us that the postal code should be its own thing, right? It should be separated by spaces or other such things. We shouldn't be finding this pattern in the middle of a word, for example. If we do, we're not going to count it as a postal code, which may or may not be what you want, right? So we can also see this on the left-hand side, right? And this on the right-hand side in the panel, right? And we can scroll through here. It's the same explanation, but without hovering over top, right? So we can build regular expressions, right? With ChatGPT, we can bring them back in here to check them. What I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to try and break this. How are you going to try and, what do I mean by that? I want you to come into the text string box and I want you to find things that you would consider to be Canadian postal codes that this current regular expression is going to reject. And because it's rejecting it, we're going to want to change the regular expression. We're going to want to make it more inclusive. So what can you write in the text string box that you're going to count as a Canadian postal code that the current expression that we've pasted in there will reject. And if you can find one that it can reject, I'd like you to throw it in the bottom of our Google Doc here. Let's fix the font, whatever. Yeah, perfect. I'm just going to write rejected codes. Okay. So here we already have one in here, right? We have one that's got a hyphen or a dash instead of the space. Ooh, that one's going to get kicked out, right? There's nothing in the current regular expression that allows for that. What else? What other things can you do? Imagine that you're responsible for checking the validity of regular expressions. What might the validity of Canadian postal codes? What might people do that will break the current example? What might they do? So when is that a hyphen? Yeah. So we got lowercase is one example we're getting in the chat here. Spaces in unusual places, right? Let's consider that. Oh, somebody's got an underscore there. Somebody's got a star there. These are all great examples, right? So here we've got the spaces moved around, right? A1 space A1, A1, right? Like maybe they just hit space at the wrong time. They were typing really fast. Will we reject that? Well, oftentimes they do, because it gets more complicated to write them to capture these things. But we're going to ask, we're going to give the burden to ChatGPT, right? We're going to give the burden to ChatGPT. So what are we going to ask ChatGPT to do? Well, come back into ChatGPT. And I'm going to say something like this. Now, here's a part where we can start to diverge. You don't have to type exactly what I'm typing. You can try your own thing, but I want you to modify. If you want, you can focus in on the example that we're using as a group, or you can grab the regular expression that was returned for you, right? So modify this regular expression to allow hyphens as well as spaces. Okay. So you're seeing some interesting things here, right? So first off, it does what we asked it to, right? Even if you've never read regular expressions before, here and the example that an explanation, sorry, that it provides at the bottom, this is a way to say either or, right? So either a space or, which is the pipe character, a hyphen, right? Either a space or a hyphen. And I want them one or more times, 0 or 1 times, which is what the question mark means for the thing immediately in front of it. And we have this group. But it's also being creative here. We didn't ask it to do this, right? We didn't ask it to turn on lowercase. And it's turning on lowercase or case insensitivity, right? Even though it hasn't changed the regular expression itself, and it's still specifying. So we've got a double specification here. This is perhaps not the cleanest regular expression possible. If you were taking a class and somebody asked you to write a regular expression to capture these postal codes and you copied and pasted this in, you'd probably take marks off for being redundant here, right? So, but we can notice how we can keep asking it to do these things, right? So modify, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Modify the previous expression to allow any number of spaces or hyphens, right? Because you can imagine somebody puts 2 spaces in, right? Now it's got to think about this one for a moment. And this happens too with the free version. Maybe because you're all asking it to do postal code things right now, it's getting worked up. Sometimes, there we go. Yeah. So here we're starting to, it does what we want. Like the core difference here is that this question mark, which typically in a regular expression means 0 or 1, right, is now this asterisk, right? And so it's 0 or many, right? So it doesn't have the restriction for just being 1 and can allow us to have certain patterns. So let's copy this back in to regex 101. So I'm going to replace my previous regular expression with that one, right? And now we're seeing some groups, which we didn't ask it to do. We didn't ask it to create capturing groups. So it's being creative again here. What's a capturing group in a regular expression? It's one thing to make a match, but some things times you want to make a match, but then you want to capture a portion of that match because that portion you want to change, right? So we can imagine that we want to find, let's say we have a very long document and the name John Smith or Jane Doe shows up in that document all the time, but it should really be John Doe and Jane Smith. Well, we can build a regular expression to find John Smith, capture the Smith, and then change the Smith into Doe. So we don't need this power. We don't need this group capturing feature here, but it's built it in. So it's being creative again in a way that we didn't require. So, but the point is, we're able now to try another one, T5 X 1E2 as postal code, and I can put in as many hyphens as I want. Still going to grab that. I can put in as many hyphens or spaces as I want. That's a really nice feature. And you can imagine going back and asking it to do the things that you also suggested, right? So we could easily modify it for an underscore, right? We could ask it to do that. We could ask it to modify for an asterisk, right? Now here, I'm not sure what's happening with this one, but maybe we're supposing that the exclamation point might have been a 1, but they held the shift key down because they were doing it to get capital letters. That one would be a little tougher to do, but we could still ask ChatGPT to try it. Let's try this one. This one where the spaces are in the wrong spot, right? So this will be the last one that we'll do kind of as a group, and then I'll kind of pull out and give you a chance to ask some questions and so on. So modify, let's be polite. Please modify radius expression to allow for spaces or hyphens anywhere. Okay. So here it's allowing that modified space or hyphen followed by a digit, right? And it allows it to be 1 or 3 times. Again, perhaps not the strongest regular expression, but let's copy it back into regex, paste it in here into my window, and now I can test it, right? So something seems wrong here because it's not even capturing the examples that we had before, right? So something is wrong here. And as I add spaces in, we can see that it starts to capture stuff. So this is important for you to get, and I wanted to get to the point where you could see this today. Chat GPT can write regular expressions for you. It gets less good at doing it the more you ask it to modify a regular expression that you started with. And so the first one, they were all pretty good. The ones that, at least as I glanced through them in the Google Doc, the shared document, I think they're all going to work for you. We didn't test them all, but you could go through. I think they would all give you mostly what you want. But then as we start to modify it, it starts to get a little creative and start doing things that you didn't want. So now we've lost all the regular expressions that we had before. And so we need to come through this and fix it. So let's get rid of case insensitivity. We just don't really need it given that we're matching all these cases that are here. Sure, we'll keep the word boundary at the beginning. This is where things start to go awry in terms of it expecting that we're going to be having these spaces or these matches somewhere in here. There's one, right? So I could pick through this, or I could go back and I could just start again, right? And we could figure it out. So I want to pause with regular expressions with Chat GPT for a moment, and just what questions do you have at this point? Because my approach from here on in is to walk you through the rest of the features that are available in Regex 101, and then show you some other resources and then open it up for questions. So before we go down that path, is there a question you have about how we might use ChatGPT or how we might use Regex 101 before we go on? What questions do you have? Can I generate examples from a regex? I think I can. Can you say a little bit more? It's the question that's in the chat. I don't want to generate the wrong example or something that doesn't capture what you're after. Oh, did you mean ask, say, like take it, given a regex, generate 10 random examples and match it? Sure, let's do that. Let's do that. So let's come back here and grab what we started using. So I'll grab this, and I'll come back to ChatGPT. You can try this too. Please generate 10 examples that match this. Now, as it's chugging away here, oh, apparently I broke it. All right, well, somehow I broke it. So yes, maybe I needed to specify as a regular expression, although it should be smart enough to figure this out. The thing you're going to want to watch with this is if you ask it to generate examples, it'll find things that match that regular expression. But what you want is what it's probably not going to be able to do, and that's that creative thinking that where might people break the regular expression versus the one that it's built and so on. I'm not going to say it can't do that because it can do some pretty creative things, but that's the piece where you going back to Regex 101 and you having your list of examples is really going to matter. For you to be successful here, you're going to need three things, right? You need to know three things. You need to know your data. If you don't know the data you're working with, you're going to build beautiful regular expressions and they are not going to capture what you're after. What's actually in the text or the document or the genetic sequences that you're working with or whatever it is, you've got to know your data. You then need to be creative enough to think about how other people, and I'm using scare quotes here because I probably mean you and people like you, are going to mess up what you expect. Right? So this is that testing for how could this break? right? It's much easier, right, to cast your regular expression net very wide at the beginning and then narrow it down than it is to start really narrow and then not even be aware that these other matches are out there. Right? The last thing you need to know is where to go to get help and double check your regular expressions, right? Even when I would write them in even when I was in the past before ChatGPT was around, I would write them in regex 101. I try to get somebody else to read them, or I'd test them in one of the other regular expressions tools that's out there, just to make sure it's going to work. Again, a little bit of effort. Tuning it at the beginning is going to save you a whole lot of false negatives, false positives at the end, right? The false negatives are the dangerous ones, and that's what I think ChatGPT is going to have a hard time nailing for you because they're the silent thing in the background. Let's see, try to regenerate my response here again. It might still be angry. Sure, here we go. It's gonna be happy now. Right. Let's test it here. Please generate valid Canadian postal codes that will not be matched the previous expression. Yeah, so some people having to run off for another meeting. Good, so we have a question here about can we do it the other way around? As we try to check if a user input matches any of the elements from a character array or a char array or cell array, for example, with the command strcomp, I'm not sure what that command is, or contains, I don't know that command either. It is language specific, but let's try and get past that. Can we do that with the command regular expression? Yeah, you totally can, right? You can grab, yeah, you can do string comparisons, right? You can say, does this match this, right? So you could imagine you have some example strings, and you say, can you build a regular expression to match these strings, right? And you just saw, well, you saw ChatGPT do that because it knows what Canadian postal codes are, but you could pass it some example strings and say, please write a regular expression to match these strings. It could do that for you. I think this is what you're asking. And then you could check it in regex 101. Of course, if you had an exhaustive list of what you needed to match, that would be good. You also just want to check that it doesn't go too far, right? It will not be matched by the regular expression. So let's test this. So I'm going to copy this code back, paste it back in. It's getting these ones. And then I'm going to come back here to ChatGPT, and we are going to copy this list into the bottom, right? And what do we see? What do we see just happened here? All right. So it's pretty clear. Here are some valid postal codes that will not be matched by this regular expression, right? But we see here that they are matched, right? So ChatGPT is making mistakes, and you're going to see this as you use it. Let's challenge it. Those postal codes do match the regular expression. Please generate some valid codes that do not match. So we'll see what it does with this. So while it's chugging away, see, it's always very polite. It apologizes for the mistake. That's real nice. See, so it's what's it done here? It's taken the space out, right? So of course, we're going to take this back to regex 101. And if there's any question in your mind, right, they all match as well, right? So ChatGPT is struggling here. And if you're following along, I expect that if you were to come back in a week or so, it might be able to give you some answers that do fit. It is always changing. So how to wrap up for today. Would like to show you some features that are here in regex 101 that I think you'll find helpful. So in the match information box over here on the right, so we've got a whole bunch of postal codes that I've matched here. If you paste in a very long document, you want to make your matches, you can export the matches, right? So you can just pop them out. You can get them as JSON, you can get them as a comma separated values file, you can get them as plain text. Really, really nice to have. So another reason to use this perhaps in conjunction with ChatGPT, because you can dump all your text in here. You can dump all your content, and then it will pull out the matches and make it useful for you to extract them. So that's a nice feature. We have this quick reference panel in the bottom right corner. And so on the left-hand side, you can go with all the tokens, the common tokens, some anchors and so on. So if you need to know what these things are, you can pick through them. So how do I, and I can ask it questions, right? So what do I want to know about ranges? Okay, well, I can type the word range in the search and it shows me different ways to make a range, right? So this is a range we've seen, A through Z, right? What if we want a character not in a range? I want to say all these things, but not the characters in the range. Well, this is how I can set it up. I put a little hat, a little caret sign in front of the range A through Z. So it matches any character except those in a range, right? And I can pick my way through all these things here. So this is a nice little reference. Common tokens, if you're just getting started with regular expressions, these are the things you're going to see again and again, and you're seeing them there today. So there were, exactly, I want 3 or more of, or I want between 3 and 6 of. These things are here, the start of the string, end of the strings. You're seeing these in some of the regular expressions. You can come down here and you can click on it to give you examples for them. So that's a nice piece as well. We come over here on the left-hand side under this kind of share and save menu. So the regex editor, I can control what language this box is interpreting the regular expressions on. We didn't get into it today, but there are variants on the syntax for regular expressions depending on the language that you're in. And so many of the main ones, some of you here will be Python programmers, for example. I can put the Python, I can click Python here instead of the options that are already available. If you're not sure about what flavor, it has a nice little helpful explanation here with the question mark. I can click that and it will explain, well, begin to explain some of the differences between some of the flavors. And there's a nice little helpful link here if you need to read more about how to do this. If you want to generate code, right? So yeah, you can go ask ChatGPT to do it, but there's a code generator option down there at the bottom, right? And so here's a Python code to do what we just did in the box over there. So you can build your regular expression with your example, and you can come over here, and if you know some Python, you can grab that. You can do it for Ruby as well, etc., C#. So that's a nice feature as well. Under settings, if you start to build really long or complicated regular expressions, or you have a really long source document that you've copied into the text box, it might be in your interest to come into the settings option here and choose in this max execution time, 20 seconds. I don't remember if I bumped that up from the default or not, but it's probably pretty good. But if you had it, the default was something like 5 seconds, you might want to make it a little bit longer. And that's just how long it will churn through the expression. It's quite possible to build a complicated expression that takes too long to work out under shorter time periods. And you're just trying not to grind your computer down. So you can control how long it does the search for there. And you've seen the code generator already. So yeah, and the last thing I'm going to show you here on the left-hand side with regex 101 is this library. So people have built regular expressions and they have submitted them to regex 101. So if you want to find TikTok video IDs, well, somebody's built the regular expression for that, right? And so there's a whole bunch in here, and there's 848 pages of regular expressions, right? And if we type in postal codes, right? Here's Argentinian postal codes. Here's Canadian postal codes. All sorts of different versions and variants for that. So they probably work. So that's what I got for you. Hopefully, yeah, if you took nothing else away, ChatGPT can do some work for you, but you can't always trust it. regex 101 is a great tool to use for checking the things that ChatGPT does. And away we go. So last thing I'll do before you leave is I will copy my notes into the bottom of this shared document. They'll exist as long as I have an account here, which will probably be a long time. I'm open for questions. If you got to run off, please have a great day.